like this, and you'd be able to, instead of looking out like this under your visor of the sun visor you'd have over the car, this would like reflect in because of a prism effect. Now, you know, this was the style, and the cars were the things that moved it ahead. The Chevys, with that cool sound in 327 and second gear wound out, that's what moved it all forward.
Well, the 5.67s were the golden era as far as I'm concerned. It was a time when everybody felt a little bit more free and it was a less trouble-free environment. And I think that there was so much good that came out of those years in terms of how people felt about themselves. You know, I guess we could never go back, certainly. But if we could just pull forward a little bit of that enthusiasm, and I think we knew back then, at a time when people tended to trust each other and trust the products that they enjoyed, it would be a greater time to live, I have no doubt.
1170-40 in the Honey Radio License to Win jackpot. It's a great night to go cruise casting, as we are cruise casting from Mickey D's McDonald's, Redford, and it's on the north side of Grand River between Beach Daly and Inkster, just south of 8 Mile. Talk about a runner-up tally of cars. We got a 57 Bel Air convertible.
I fell in love with those cars, and 57 was always the one that I was going to own when I turned old enough to drive. And that was a real great car, and since I've been 16 years old, and I'm now 40, I've always had a 57 Chevrolet titled to me, at least one. And I've owned as many as 5 at one time. And now I'm back down to 1, and it's sunshine here. And I've had her now for 9 years, and she's got a home for life. And if there was a way to be buried in her, I would be.
For most of us, these cars remind us of the things we did and the things we didn't do, but wanted to. Man, we had fun. This car is as much a symbol of good times as rock and roll and Saturday night at the drive-in.
Bound by no earthly law, possessing weird and enormous powers, these strange teenagers from outer space invade the Earth and prepare to possess its women.
What is that? It's a Sorex soricity.
Looks like a small rat.
Shrews as small as rats, perfect for scientific experiments, until they began to grow and grow into things.
They must eat 3 times their own weight in food every 24 hours or starve.
Well, the drive-in theater was all about your relationship with clearing your face up. You know, you were more concerned with your hormones in the drive-in than you were with the show. You were part of a platoon, and you assumed your position. You know, I mean, there's no way that a rat car would pull upside of a beautiful chopped and channeled 51 or 55 Chev. You know, I mean, it just wouldn't happen. You assumed your position in the pack.
2 minutes to go to the snack bar.
The cars kind of epitomized a time period that generally is good times, good feelings. And 5.67 Chevy means the same thing. Whatever that might mean to those people, it does mean something. It might mean hot rod or race car or part of the nostalgia kick, or my father had one, or that's the car I've always wanted, or, you know, those kind of stories. There were many choices available, whether it was performance that you were after, outside stainless trim appearances, automatic standards. There were just so many choices. You could have the car of your dreams if you wanted to buy a new one that way.
No doubt about it, they're damn good cars. A lot were built and a lot survived. And for most collectors, keeping those trophies on the road is an ongoing concern.
I think they start, the 55, 67, they start to get popular now because they see it in the magazines, and you get parts for. That's something special, because if you got by example, a 53 Buick, you don't get parts over in Switzerland. But 5, 6, 7 Chevys, you got parts, and I think that's the reason why it starts to getting popular over there.
We still can't believe that there's that many cars being restored, but in the Chevrolet line only. And when people don't know us, we meet them somewhere and they say, well, what do you do for a living? You know, you're on an airplane somewhere, or you're wherever out for dinner, and we say, well, we're in the Chevrolet reproduction, interior, and parts business. And they kind of look at you and they say, oh, yeah, right. And of a sudden you give them a catalog or something and they cannot believe how many parts are available for these cars.
15, 20 years ago, the 5, 6, 7 Chevys had been in the auto wreckers so long that they just squashed them. They were gone. And the auto wreckers moved to newer years, of course, to service their needs. And now those cars that are found are being resurrected, not just parted out, let's say.
This car has always been our favorite. When we got married, we had a 58 Chevrolet. And we sold that. I had a 55, he had a 55. Of course, way back then you bought them and you sold them, you had fun with them. Never know what they're going to be worth now, of course. But we always kind of wanted another one. And why this is our favorite? I guess you always heard about the nifty 50s and fun 50s, I guess, but I just thought they were the best looking cars. Particularly 57s, of course I'm partial to the 57s.
And no wonder. In 57, there's nothing like a Chevy but a Chevy. In new styling that instantly appeals to your eye, and in newest performance features.
It's a major facelift on a 55 body, and we really spent the money on this car. Chevrolet did, I should say, so that the buyer, you know, psychologically, we wanted him to think he was buying a baby Cadillac. Here, the side treatment is different, naturally, from the 55 and 6. No two-tone paint. Why? The designer was getting tired of the two-tone paint thing by this time, so we figured, what can we do to give it a Bel Air treatment, but no two-tone paint? So we wound up with a nice chrome spear, and then selected some aluminum back there, which went on the side and blended in with the new tail fin that was designed. And of course, the tail fin lent itself to a new taillight.
The 57 Chevrolet is said to be the most popular car of all time. There's never been one before or since that has been as popular or probably as all-around good a car as a 57 Chevy is.
And one of the other expensive things that we did on the 57 was lower the hood. And that made us lower the cowl. And that was an extremely expensive thing to do. And it got into all sorts of complications in the engineering end. But we did it because Cole had the feeling, this is what the people want, and this is what they'll pay for. And there's, you know, we ran into a lot of people who would say, oh, you can't do that because it's going to be too expensive, and I can build that car for 23 cents less or $1 less some other way. But that isn't what people should look for, and that isn't what Cole looked for. He was after what will they buy? What will they like? And I think he had a pretty good sense of that.
Well, I'll call it Joe Sixpack's car. Joe Sixpack, common man, Mr. America. Down where the rubber meets the road. They were ready to move out into the suburbs and get away from being tied down. They wanted to get out in the country and out in the world and go. And these cars that were built in the mid-50s were just representative of go, 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 go.
We are a small family.
We
do everything together.
Where?
Taking a trip.
Where few families had a car in the early 30s, the family of the post-war not only had a car, but wanted a second. The streets and highways were not prepared for the car explosion. By 1960, 4 out of every 5 families owned a car. The landscape was being transformed.
Each section to improve existing traffic conditions as it is finished. Clover leaves and underpasses will take the place of the old level railway crossings to speed the movement of private and commercial transport. A beginning has been made, and there is yet much to do.
Increased car travel brought about thousands of new roadside establishments, fast food joints, service stations, drive-in movies, and motor combined with hotel to spell motel.
Let's go up and see it in action.
Dominating the landscape with an annual budget larger than some small countries, General Motors was the largest company in the United States. Time magazine honored GM President Harlow Curtis as Man of the Year. What's good for the country is good for General Motors, and what's good for General Motors is good for the country. Ford may have invented mass assembly, but Chevrolet was now the king of the middle-class motorists.
We had a period of time there at General Motors where we had probably the most successful team in history. We had Harley J. Earl, who was a powerful executive, as vice president of design staff, and we had one of the most dynamic men in the world, Ed Cole. He was a creative engineer, and Ed Cole was the spark behind Chevrolet. And so between all these guys, they had a team that worked well together.
I think all of the people in our studio were enthusiasts, and I think, I know Cole was an enthusiast, and Earl was certainly an enthusiast, and you needed that enthusiasm throughout the development of the car till you had a final product. And now I see in the clubs, there's the same enthusiasm, and they're carrying that on 35 years later, and I think that's terrific.
Guys, like we were talking about before, they'll buy a car that's a 7 or 8 year old restoration and completely redo the car over again.
It's a place where we have the room to put some of the cars, and other club members are aware of it, and for many of the simple items like door handles, sheet metal parts, floor pans, quarters, a few things like that, they're there, they're available. The thing is, you just can't go to an auto wreckers because there just are none there anymore. The source of used parts in that manner is gone.
These people are preserving some of these cars that have been, that if not, would be rotted away. And lately, the car business has turned into a big business, is what it is. And if it wasn't for the little guys like us, these big guys with the big money cars wouldn't be there now, because the little guys have preserved them. And they preserve them because they have a love for cars.
Jump, 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 everybody. Jump, 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 everybody. Jump, 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 everybody. Jumping at...
Well, it wasn't a whole lot to be done, but we went ahead and had it painted, and the paint really turned out so fantastic that somebody suggested we put it in the car shop. And we said, nah. But we did. It was a car show, a local car show in Richmond that we put it in. And it won everything. And we were hooked. And we've been hooked ever since.
About 8 years ago, we bought my son one for Christmas. It didn't have no transmission, no motor. His body was terrible, you know. But he had 3 years to go before he got his license. So on the day he got his license, the car was ready and he drove it out of the garage.
Hey, Joe, how about some lights? Now, did you ever see anything as new and as fresh looking as that?
It's so new, it's almost too new to be true.
You know, by golly, he's absolutely right.
The 50s were rough. So when the 55s came out, that really was a break for General Motors. 55, 6, and 7s. And the 58s were pretty bad there. They went a little haywire.
Yes, the 1958 Chevrolet, all new, with inspired sculpturamic styling, breathtaking lowness of design, dramatic big car width and length, the most fabulous automobile of the year. Luxury lounge
our minds then became glued on 1958, 59, and 60, and we got rid of our 55, 6s, and 7s, and they're out of our mind. We were out and doing other things. But I understand why people would want to go back.
This is a story of a man who wanted a new 1957 car. He did a lot of looking, a lot of thinking, a lot of comparing. But his final choice was surprisingly easy. Yes, you're right as rain. He bought a new 57 Chevrolet.
Yeah, it's the question is asked 100 times, and then everybody has an answer, you know. What makes the 55, 6, and 7 so popular?
The designers and the engineers and the modelers worked together. They traded off ideas. And our studio was sort of like a family. It was really great.
GM couldn't do any wrong in those days. They were, you know, like, for example, Chevrolet was doing 65% of the corporation's business between 55 and 58. And that was more, that 65% was more than the entire Ford Motor Car Company was doing, and Chrysler.
Odds are, this car will be rescued. Other cars do and will continue to have their place in our cultural history. But the classic chill will always stand as the ultimate 50 symbol. Top of the heap of automobile mass consumer style. The designers say it was their intention to make the best car possible, and they captured the dream of a generation. And today's collectors are keeping those dreams alive.
So in those days, you'd have a car, which was your motel room, your apartment. You could throw your clothes anywhere you wanted. You could do anything you wanted in it, you know.
I was in his car show over there, and he said he was conceived in the backseat of the 57. Cruising was just never a term then. Now it's a term, you know. That's just what we did. It's a way of life. A way of life. It'll never be that way again. You know, it's great now, but not as great as it was back when it was really happening.
I doubt very much if anything that they're building today in the automobile market will hold its value, its intrinsic value, the way these particular vehicles have. Today, all of the new cars, they all look alike. Aerodynamics, I guess they call it.
I wanna go home. Next on TLC, a victim of Crohn's disease undergoes critical surgery. Witness high-tech medicine in action on The Operation. Then, fear comes to the forefront on The Human Experience.
When I was 16, ran away, all alone on the stray. What can I do? What can I say? I'm a lonely teenager.